Hey, what's up, everybody? We are going to do a video today on reproductive gross anatomy for both male and female. We're actually going to sneak in a little bit of microanatomy as well. So, what we got here is a male pelvis model. Of course, we got digestive, urinary, and reproductive organs, all visible, all sorts of things going on here. Let's start with the male external genitalia, including the penis and the scrotum. The penis, of course, is an organ for both the urinary and reproductive system. It's an organ for copulation, for urination, for ejaculation, all sorts of different things. The penis has the shaft and the expanded tip, which is called the glans penis. It's an erectile structure. Now, this person has an interesting circumcision where the left half of their penis was circumcised, and on the right half, where the number 2 is, down here, kind of hiding behind my slide advancer thing, is the foreskin or the prepuce. Now let's jump back to the scrotum here. Scrotum houses the testes, keeps them slightly cooler than body temperature, which enhances spermatogenesis. And we see a testy right here. This testy is the site of spermatogenesis, so sperm production, as well as testosterone production. Behind each testy, we're going to have an epididymis. So we've got a pair of testes and a pair of epididymides. Coming out of the epididymis is the vas deferens or ductus deferens, which carries sperm and testicular fluid by peristalsis during ejaculation. Now, the vas deferens is part of a whole collection of things going into and out of the testy, and the whole collection, which includes the testicular vein and testicular artery, is called the spermatic cord. The vas deferens and the rest of the spermatic cord are coming up, going into the abdominal cavity, and we see the vas deferens continuing over the urinary bladder, past the ureter. Do notice the other ureter on the other side. The vas deferens does get a little bit wider towards the posterior urinary bladder. That is called its ampulla. And the ampulla of the vas deferens is going to meet up with the seminal vesicle and its duct, and they're going to both end up in the prostate gland, which we'll cut open and take a look at in a second. Of course, the seminal vesicle makes about 60% of the fluid volume of semen, while the prostate gland makes up about 30%, and there's a variety of important chemicals that these two glands are contributing. Now, directly under the prostate gland, we do see this layer of skeletal muscle. This is the urogenital diaphragm. Okay, so we got some good stuff going on here. Now we've sliced things open. So we can see the interior of the urinary bladder here with its detrusor muscle and with its rugae. We see the urethra beginning here. Of course, there would be an internal urethral orifice as the opening. There would be an internal urethral sphincter right here. And we see that prostate gland right there. The prostate gland has 2 tubes within it that we see here. We've got the prostatic urethra as well as the ejaculatory duct. We see one ejaculatory duct there, actually a pair, one on each side. The ejaculatory ducts are formed when the vas deferens combines with the duct of the seminal vesicle. Now, under the prostate gland, we do still see the urogenital diaphragm. The urethra running through it is called the membranous urethra, and it would actually be surrounded by an external urethral sphincter, which isn't depicted here. Then within the penis, we've got the penile urethra. The penile urethra extends all the way to the external urethral orifice. The penile urethra is also called the spongy urethra because it is enclosed by this reddish and bluish tissue called the corpus spongiosum. The corpus spongiosum is one of the 3 erectile tissues in the penis. There are also a pair of corpora cavernosa, and we see one corpus cavernosum right here. And each of the erectile tissues are filled with vascular spaces, vascular sinuses, that allow the tissues to become engorged with blood, leading to an erection. The corpus spongiosum does expand distally to become the gland's penis. And in this view here, we do see the covering of the gland's penis, which is the prepuce. All right, what else do we see here? We also see the sliced open scrotum with the testy right here. We do see its connective tissue covering, which is called the tunica albuginea. And we see the epididymis behind it. Epididymis, of course, is for sperm maturation and storage, while the testy is for sperm and testosterone production. Switching models. We got many similar things, just slightly different artwork, and we're going to see one new term here. Of course, again, we got the penis with its shaft and its glans penis. No prepuce on this circumcised penis here. We got the scrotum behind it with its testy and its epididymis. Testy for sperm production, epididymis for sperm storage and maturation. It is hard to make out the individual vas deferens in here, but it's in here. Instead, we really see the collection of all the structures going in and out of the scrotum, and that collection is referred to as the spermatic cord. Now, the spermatic cord is actually penetrating the abdominal wall here, and I don't have it labeled, but there is a passageway through the abdominal wall known as the inguinal canal. So do make sure you know that vocabulary term. Just know all the vocabulary in the lab manual, and you will do great. Such good actionable advice right there. Okay, what else do we see? Well, I do see the vas deferens. There we go. I do see the vas deferens right there, going past the ureter. There's the other ureter on the other side. Here's the urinary bladder. Here's the seminal vesicle. The vas deferens is going to unite with it, and that forms the ejaculatory duct, which is going to be running diagonally through the prostate gland. Now, of course, underneath the prostate gland, we see the urogenital diaphragm, which is part of the larger muscular floor called the pelvic diaphragm. All right, I think that is everything on this particular page. Yes, it is. So we've got another model here, which is an okay model. It's got one other neat thing that I want to point out. So you can go and pause the video, go and find everything. But I want to show you the bulbourethral gland, this little guy right here. There's the bulbourethral gland, number 8 right there. The bulbourethral gland is responsible for making a basic mucus before ejaculation. Ejaculation need not occur for the bulbourethral gland to make its mucus, but the bulbourethral gland makes mucus in order to kind of flush out, neutralize the acidity in the penile urethra, give it a little bit of lubrication as well. So go through this model, but pay attention to the bulbourethral gland. And I think that was the last boy model. Yes, it was. Let's look at the female model here. We do see the female external genitalia right here, including the mons pubis, one of the two labia majora. So that is a single labium majus. One of the two labia minora, which is a labium minus. Anteriorly, we see part of the clitoris right here, and do note the clitoris goes up and extends back. It's got two legs extending back, so it is not just the little structure that protrudes. We also see a gland back here called the greater vestibular gland, which makes mucus, which is going to help lubricate the vagina for sexual intercourse. The vagina, with its stratified squamous epithelium, is devoid of mucus glands, so it relies on the cervix of the uterus as well as the greater vestibular glands for mucus for lubrication. Speaking of vaginas, we do see the vagina right here, nestled in between the rectum and the urinary bladder. There's a ureter right there. Kind of hard to see, but under all this stuff is the uterus. The uterus is leaning upon the urinary bladder, which is good for support, but bad during pregnancy. We do see the ovary right there, as well as the fallopian tube, including its fimbriae, which are the finger-like extensions, which are not perfect on this model. We'll see them better on other models. The fimbriae coalesce to form a region of the fallopian tube called the infundibulum, which then becomes the ampulla. We also see the mesentery covering all these structures, which is called the broad ligament. I guess I split this slide up over 2 pages, but I kind of just knocked it all out in one. So, yeah. Although I forgot to mention, we do have a pelvic diaphragm. The entire thing is the pelvic diaphragm, with the region adjacent to the urinary bladder and vagina being the urogenital diaphragm. All right, so I think we covered everything here. Let's slice this guy open. We still see labia majora and minora, mons pubis. We see the clitoris here. But now we also see the external urethral orifice, the entire urethra. Notice we don't have portions to the urethra the way in which we did for the male. Internal urethral orifice would be here. Internal urethral sphincter would be here. Detrusor muscle going around the bladder. Rugae visible in there as well. We've got the vagina with its rugae back here and the external vaginal orifice. We can see the uterus more nicely now. This is the fundus of the uterus up here. Then this is the body of the uterus here. And this part down here is the cervix of the uterus. The cervix of the uterus is going to protrude into the vagina, leaving a space on each side. Each space is called a fornix. Now we do see the internal cavity of the uterus. This is the uterine cavity. We also see the cervical canal within the cervix. The connection between the cervical canal and the uterine cavity is called the internal os. The connection between the cervical canal and the vagina is the external os. We also see the 3 layers of the uterus. There is an outer layer called the perimetrium. I don't know if I have a label on that, but the very outer layer is the perimetrium. Then there is a muscular layer called the myometrium, made of smooth muscle. And then the red and like the light sort of tannish color here, that is the endometrium. Okay, of course, the endometrium is the layer that is responsive to ovarian hormones. It grows during every cycle in preparation for pregnancy, and then is mostly shed at the end of each, or the end and beginning of the next cycle, as menstruation when pregnancy does not happen. More on that in lecture, of course. All right, in this model, we've kind of like pulled all the internal genitalia out and spread everything out for easier viewing. Here is the vagina with its rugae. We do see the cervix right here protruding into the vagina, creating a space on each side, which is a fornix. Within the cervix, we have the cervical canal. The opening here is the external os. The opening here is the internal os. Then here is the uterine cavity. This is the body of the uterus right here. This is the fundus of the uterus right here. The purple is the endometrium, and then we have the myometrium. And even though there is no label on it, there is a perimetrium here. Now we do see an ovary right here. When you watch the histology video, you'll learn about the corpus luteum. We actually do see a corpus luteum right here, so note that. More on that in the histo video. We see the fallopian tube here. Fallopian tube has fimbriae, which coalesce to become the infundibulum, which then becomes the ampulla. So, of course, realize the ovary is going to release an oocyte on day 14 of the menstrual cycle. That event is called ovulation. The cilia on the fallopian tube sweep furiously to draw the oocyte in. Within the ampulla is the typical site of fertilization. All right, what else do we see here? We do see the ovarian ligament, connective tissue structure that anchors the ovary to the uterus. We also see a big layer of mesentery called the broad ligament. Okay, what we've got here is an ovary. Here is an ovarian ligament. Here is a little tidbit of the broad ligament that we mentioned earlier. And we do see the ovarian artery and ovarian vein feeding and draining blood. Now, when we zoom in on the ovary, we see an epithelium on the outside called the germinal epithelium, as well as a connective tissue layer called the tunica albuginea. And then we are also going to see a variety of important structures, including follicles and a corpus luteum, as well as some other things too. So we're going to go into more detail with the follicles in the histology video, but do note that we've got some different primary follicles right here. Some different primary follicles here. We've got some primordial follicles over here. We have a Graafian follicle right here with its large antrum in the act of ovulation. And then, as we'll discuss in the histo video, the Graafian follicle turns into this structure, which is the corpus luteum. And then the corpus luteum, if pregnancy does not occur, dies and turns into something called a corpus albicans. I feel like I'm not really going into the physiology of all these things. We will cover that in more detail in lecture, or maybe we've already covered it, depending on when you're watching this video. All right, got one more slide to show you here, last one. Check out this fallopian tube. This is the best fallopian tube of all because you really see the nice fimbriae and the infundibulum and the ampulla. There's that broad ligament. There's that ovarian ligament. We do also see a lateral ligament called the suspensory ligament here, as well as a variety of follicles in here, including primordial follicle, primary follicle, secondary follicle, Graafian follicle, and a corpus luteum in various stages, as well as a corpus albicans. So all this cool stuff that we see in this nice ovary model, plus that fallopian tube up there. And that, my friends, I think is everything. We're just flying through some anatomy in this video. Gross anatomy of the repro system. Check that off. Go through all these structures, of course. Know what they are, know what they do, and you will be in amazing shape for the lab exam. The last one, which you are going to do great on. And with that, I'll see you next time. As always, if you have any questions, let me know. Happy to help. Bye-bye.